Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another review on Ryquin's Wrestling Rants. My name is Pete, aka Ryquin, and today I'm going to be talking about Takeover Toronto. What a show. Holy Jesus, what a show. I thought it was absolutely outstanding on all fronts, but we're going to go through a match-by-match thing. Obviously, spoilers involved. So, NXT Takeover Toronto, let's get right into the review, and we start things off with the opening match of the night, which was Tye Dillinger versus Bobby Roode, two Canadians going at it in Toronto, and I thought this was an absolutely outstanding match. The quality of wrestling in it was very good, and the crowd were super into it. It was actually really 50-50 between the crowd, between Dillinger and Roode as well, which I thought was amazing. And it did exactly what it needed to do. It got the crowd hyped up for the rest of the night. I think the right person won with Bobby Roode, as much as I love Tye Dillinger. I just thought this was a really great match. I was super into it because I love both of these guys. I think they're amazing. And they did exactly what they needed to. It was some really solid wrestling. It was more about the crowd, I feel, this match. And how they reacted to it, more so than the match themselves, because I feel like they could have gone out there and done absolutely nothing, and the match still would have been really good, because the crowd would have been into it, but the quality of the match was still awesome. So it was just a really solid match, and a really good way to kick off the show. Did exactly what you needed to. You know, just kind of capped off their rivalry they've been having, which has been a pretty solid one. And Tye got his little hometown ovation at the end of the match, you know, stood in the ring and, you know, everyone kind of cheered him on, which was great. So I thought it was a very solid match and a really good way to kick off the show. It's exactly what it needed to do for this event. But then that transitioned into the second match of the night, and that is the finals of the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. That's the Authors of Pain taking on TM61, with Paul Ellering suspended in a cage above the ring, which was so weird, and I didn't get it. I know it's supposed to be a throwback to Dusty and all that stuff, but like, oh, it's just stupid. I hated it. Hated the fact he was in a cage, but aside from that, really solid match. Once again, both teams looking really strong, which is exactly what it needed to do. It's an unexpected final, I think. Authors of Pain versus TM61 was not one that I would have expected. There was an amazing spot from Shane Thorne, who went up, you know, and dived off the scaffolding thing they had in place for the cage suspended above the ring. He dived off it, did a front flip onto all three of the guys on the floor there. It was great. Again, crowd was super invested into it. Both teams coming out strong, and Paul Ellering with the assist to help Authors of Pain win the Dusty Cup, which is great. He dropped a chain from the cage suspended above, and one of the guys took advantage of that, attempted to hit him with it, but missed. Chain went really dangerously into the crowd, but no one's going to talk about that one. And then after that slight distraction, he managed to get him in. He went, I think, who was it? Shane Thorne went for a roll-up, managed to get up, kick out of that one, and they managed to tag him in, and in with the clothesliney leg sweepy thing. What's it called? The last chapter? I think it's that. And they managed to pick up the win. So, Authors of Pain coming away with the Dusty Cup. I think, again, the right people won. I think it was very solid, did what it needed to do. It was a slightly tainted victory with Paul Ellering's help, but it didn't actually come into play because he didn't actually connect with the chain at all. So it was still, Authors of Pain still looked strong. TM61 looked very strong throughout. It's a really nice moonsault from Nick Miller in the middle of the match as well. It was just a very solid bout. Once again, doing exactly what it needed to do for both teams, making them look really strong, but in a nice finish onto the Dusty Tag Team Classic. I know obviously this round of the Tag Team Classic was not quite the same caliber as last year, but it's still a solid, you know, a solid victory for Authors of Pain. It's a thing that Paul Ellering can hop on about in future weeks. Be like, hey, my team is Dusty Cup champions now. Get on my level. So yeah, it was just really solid. I think overall the Dusty Cup was very good. It furthered rivalries. It brought about rivalries. It debuted Sanity. You know, it set up the Dillinger-Roode match for this takeover. It managed to have a very solid final with Authors of Pain CM61. Had some really solid wrestling throughout the tournament. It was just good stuff all in all. Dusty Cup, I approve all in all. And then after that, we move on to the match of the night. I think hands down, has to be said, was the Revival taking on DIY, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. And Jesus, man, what a match. I think this is as close as it can get to a perfect match. Just in terms of the build to it, the crowd reaction, the storytelling, the wrestling quality, the back and forth, the heart-pounding moments, the near falls, the finishes, the near finishes. It's just... it was perfect. As close as you can get, I think, to perfect. That's what I have to say about it. There were some amazing spots. It was a 2 out of 3 falls tag match for the tag team titles, and the first Shatter Machine that got the first fall for the Revival looked absolutely brutal on Johnny Gargano. I was like, how do you still have a face? Looked insane, and it was a great way to pick up the first fall on that one. They managed to come back and get a fall of their own using their, whatever it's called, the knee super kick kneeling thing. Boom, in the middle, connection thingy-me-bob. That thing in the middle. They got a fall back with that one, and then I think just that sequence from second fall to third fall was just incredible. That section of the match was just incredible wrestling, and it's matches like this is why I watch wrestling. Like, just straight up, it is just absolutely top tier, absolutely world class wrestling. I will not stop harping on about this match because it was amazing. The ending part as well. You had DIY going for connected with a Shatter Machine, which was amazing. Really good stuff. I thought that was it. That was it. It's over. Nope, but near fall on that one. They had a little sequence where Revival attempted to go for the meet in the middle knee kick thing that DIY have, and that's when they kind of screwed up. It was when I saw on Twitter some guy tweeted that it was very much like John Cena's loss at WrestleMania 28. As soon as Revival deviated from their normal plan and started to mock their opponent, they got punished for it. They tried to do their opponent's moves, and they cost them. They managed to get him into an armbar and the other thing that Johnny Gargano was doing, whatever, it's some kind of chokey submission thing. Got them both in the center of the ring, and even at the very end of the match, the Revival just show once again why they are so good, because the storytelling on their face, you could see they were in massive pain, and then they were holding each other's hands to prevent the other one from tapping. It was like, that is perfect. That is absolutely perfect. That's exactly what you do. You don't want to give up yourself, but you want to make sure that your tag team partner doesn't give up either. So it's not just as simple as, oh, let's not tap. It was, you can't tap. I'm forcing you not to tap. It was great, and then eventually they held the submissions in for long enough that they were just like looking at each other like, okay, let's tap, and then they both tapped together. DIY new NXT Tag Team Champions, and I think deservedly so. Again, I think the right people won. I don't know whether this means the main roster for Revival now. We'll have to see how that one goes. I would love to see them there, honestly. I think it could be a good time for them, depending on the way the Survivor Series results go. I could see them going to, like, the SmackDown thing. If, let's say that the Raw Tag Team Survivor Series match, if Raw wins it, I could see Revival coming out on the following SmackDown and just being like, guys, you all suck. This is how you should, this is how you should be as a tag team. We are the top guys, and we're going to show you how it's done. And maybe they could go after American Alpha and resume that feud and just be like, hey, you guys sucked. Let's say that American Alpha were the last tag team to be in the Survivor Series tag team match. They were the last team to get eliminated. And be like, hey, you guys had all the responsibility at the end, and you guys screwed up. If it was the Revival in that match, well, we would have done it better. And then they could do a rivalry off that. Like, it works. It's a good time for them to go up if they want to do that. I am slightly worried with how they're going to be treated on the main roster, because I feel like Rival's gimmick revolves around them having long matches. They need the time for the crowd to get invested, because on the face of it, they don't have anything immediately appealing about them. They don't have, some flippy offense. That's the entire point of them, is they don't have flippy offense. They're no flips, just fists. So it's just, I don't know. I slightly worried that they won't get the time they need for the crowd to get invested in them, so when they go up on the main roster, their whole gimmick, their ethos behind how they wrestle will be lost a little bit. So I'm quite worried about that, but I hope if they're given due deference, if they're given enough time, they can show why they're great, and it's when they're in long matches like this, they can prove why they're great. They do so many things in terms of storytelling and psychology in the ring about how they prevent their teams from getting tags, how they conduct themselves, and how they cut the ring off and make sure the person's in their half of the ring all the time. They do it so well, but they need the time in their matches to be able to do that, so I'm just hoping that they get given the time for that. But if they get given the time for that, yay, they're going to be cool on the main roster. Whether they get that time or not, who knows? But let's move on to the penultimate match on the card. There was only 5 matches on this card, which is great, by the way. We move on to the women's title match, and that is Asuka versus a returning Mickie James. I feel like this was a solid match. I feel like it was the worst match on the card, but that's not a knock on the women. I feel like they did a pretty good performance, but it was just an unfortunate card placement, I think. Following the match of the night, Revival DIY was always going to be tough to follow, and it just kind of fell on the shoulders of the women to do so. Like I said, it was still a solid match. It was a very good match from both parts, from Asuka and Mickie James. I thought they both did very well. There was pretty much wasn't any particular, like botches. There wasn't anything that they messed up particularly. It was just a really solid match. It was just not as good as everything else on the card, really, I feel. But I don't think, again, that's a knock on how the women performed. I think they performed very well. It was just where they were placed on the card. The crowd was kind of recharging from Revival DIY, and they weren't quite as invested in this match as they maybe could have been if they were in a different place on the card. But there's not much they could have done about it. I think it was the way it should go, unless maybe the only other option would have been to have have the opening bout with Dillinger Rude, then go straight to the women's title match, then have Revival DIY, then the Dusty Cup, then the main event. That could have been an alternate, but again, I feel like the Dusty Cup participants, the Authors of Pain and TM61, needed that ride off Dillinger Rude more than the women needed it, because the women still had interesting elements. They still have an undefeated Asuka and a returning Mickie James. That itself was hype enough, and I feel like even though they were the worst place on the card, like basically an unfortunate placement for them, I still feel like they had the star power and the performance to still make it a really good match. And that's exactly what they did. They did a really, really good match. The only slight issue I had with this match was that I think the ending sequence looked a little bit off, in that Asuka got Mickie James into the Asuka lock, and she was kind of holding it, and James was trying to escape. She managed to, like, roll her up into a pin, but even when she kicked out, she held on to the Asuka lock, which was great. I love that storytelling element. And then when she kind of looked to just be kind of adjusting herself to get it in, to lock it in properly, James immediately tapped out, which was a little bit weird to me. I felt like it could have been done where the whole sequence they were doing with her trying to escape, Asuka not letting go, and then her locking it in deep, cinching it in, getting it properly locked in, holding it for a bit, and then James tapping out would have made a little bit more sense, but that's just me. But aside from that, it was just a really solid match. Both of them looked really good. It was nice to see Mickie James again. She did very well, I think, considering probably the amount of pressure that was on her to perform well, because they've been needing, all these amazing female performers to take on Asuka, and none of them have succeeded. They needed Mickie James to come back and look like someone who could potentially win. And she did that, it was very good. Very solid match. But, like I said, probably the worst match on the card. Nothing against the women involved, though. Just the unfortunate placement on the card for them, I think. But that being said, let's move on to the main event, and that is Shinsuke Nakamura defending his NXT title against Samoa Joe. Now, I would call this upset of the night, because Samoa Joe won his NXT title back. Two-time NXT champion, now the first ever two-time NXT champion. And this was a very, very good match. I was really, really happy with how this match went, because it was just building. I don't think anyone expected it to be to the level of Revival DIY, because that had just set the bar so high. And it was just, I don't know, it had a lot to live up to with that match, but it almost got there. Like, it was that good. It was such a good back and forth between the two throughout the match. You had Joe going for the muscle buster but not being able to quite do it. And then you had Shinsuke hitting a Kinshasa while Joe was sitting, much how he separated his jaw in the last one at Brooklyn. Hit the Kinshasa again and he kicked out of it, which was great. He hit another Kinshasa onto the back of his head, but he kind of rolled out the ring from it, which allowed him to get the momentum. He did the spot with the throw onto the stairs, which, separated his shoulder beforehand, got him back in the ring, muscle buster, and Joe wins the match. And it was amazing. What a way to end the night, I feel. It was an amazing main event, the perfect ending to a damn near perfect show. Like, it was that good. It was one of my favourite WWE events of all time, which says something, you know. It was just...
I liked it too.
Thanks. That would be my girlfriend, saying she also enjoyed the event because she stayed up to watch it with me. Anyway, I feel like this was an absolutely incredible show. I really couldn't have asked for much more than this, which is why I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. And honestly, I really don't think it's actually possible to get a perfect 10. Ha! Pun intended. A perfect 10 on a show, because nothing is going to be perfect. Like, you'd want the women's match to be slightly better, in my opinion, because it was still a really solid match. It was just the crowd weren't quite as invested as they could have been because of the placement on the card, but you can't help that. There's no way to avoid that problem. And there was tiny little things like, you know, I wish Authors of Pain had a slightly, and TM61 had a slightly more developed match, and the finish was not necessarily sudden, but it was like, oh, there's a chain, you missed it, finisher, boom, done. After, you know, I think it was like 10-15 minutes they were given in the match. It wasn't like the longest match in the world, but maybe if they had a little bit more time in it, but then that would have been taking time away from another match, which was important. So, I don't know, like, you can't really have a perfect show. And this is, I feel, as close as you can get to a perfect show. It was absolutely incredible, and I will not stop talking and praising this show forever, because it was absolutely outstanding. So yeah, 9.5 out of 10 for TakeOver Toronto, and tonight is Survivor Series when I'm recording this, so fun times, am I right? I'm going to be staying up to watch this this pay-per-view as well, which is fun. I'm really looking forward to that. So if you enjoyed this review of TakeOver Toronto, make sure to leave a like in the video. Let me know any opinions you guys have, what thoughts you had about TakeOver Toronto in the comments as well. That would be really appreciated. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of the show. And I hope you guys are looking forward to Survivor Series, or if this video is uploaded after the Survivor Series, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for a Survivor Series review that'll be going up on this channel soon as well. Would be very much appreciated if you watch that too. But thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you guys sometime soon.